Hello everyone, this is weather. In this update, we're going to be talking about the atmosphere resetting over the next couple of days. And then by early next week, the polar vortex looks to elongate or stretch out, sending cold Arctic air into the US all the way down into the deep south, bringing heavy snow, ice, and some of the coldest temperatures of the season for some. Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe if you hadn't subscribed already. I do daily updates in this channel to keep you ahead of the storm. So let's get right to it. Let's first of all take a look at the overall setup for today. It was a very active couple days for portions of the south and the southeast, as well as the east coast, with all that severe weather they had to deal with. But there's the setup as we go later in this afternoon, as those line of thunderstorms continue to push off the east coast while the jet stream starts to reset. Starts to kind of reset itself. There's very nice conditions out here off the west coast and much of the deep south in the midsection of the country. We do have some isolated snow showers and some little bit heavier snow in the portions of Minnesota as well as Wisconsin, as this continues to dive into our kind of a northwest flow as this system continues to push across. And so as we transfer into that Saturday time frame, that system continues to race off the east coast. We do have some isolated showers along the west coast here into portions of Washington and Oregon. That transfers over to kind of a little bit of mixed precipitation into the higher elevations. And then we still have that snow showers, more lake enhanced induced snow showers for our northern sections going into portions of the mid-Atlantic states as well as the northeast. So as we get into that Sunday time frame, again, the jet stream kind of pushes back up into Canada as we go throughout the weekend. So for much of the midsection, the deep south, and much of the east coast here is going to be experiencing really nice conditions. We do have a little bit of disturbance that's going to be coming across. This is Sunday, February the 20th. That's going to bring some isolated showers into portions of South Texas, into Louisiana, and portions of Mississippi. Nothing severe or anything like that. As the jet stream continues to lift further north, and as it does, it brings the snow line a little bit further north as well. So we still have some snow showers to contend with into portions of Montana as we go during the day on Sunday. But now let's go well to the north, all the way up in the Arctic, all the way up in the stratosphere. So this is what's often referred to as the polar vortex by Sunday, the February 20th timeframe. The further north it goes and the more circle it is, the stronger it is. And that's an indication where you have all that Arctic air just kind of bundled up well up into Canada. And you got very warm conditions with more or less a zonal flow for a good chunk of the country as that Arctic air retreats well to the north. But that doesn't last long. Strong indications of a fifth polar vortex extension, or kind of more or less a stretch where it kind of stretches out as a rubber band. You can see it by Friday, February 25th. So it starts to elongate as we get into that Tuesday time frame, sending cold Arctic air deep into the US. And as this continues to stretch and as it more or less shapes out to more of an oval, it continues to plunge and send impulses of Arctic air all the way down in the deep south. And that's what we're going to be continuing to deal with as we go into next week. So let's fine tune this. Here's your Monday setup. There's the jet stream retreating well to the north when the polar vortex is strong. So we got widespread 80-degree temperatures in Texas and 70s in Oklahoma, 70s much of the southeast and much of Florida here, and much of the Ohio Valley is experiencing very warm conditions. A good chunk of the country is going to be experiencing pretty warm conditions as that zonal flow continues. But if you go to the north, all the way up in the Dakotas, there's your -7 degrees. That's for high temperatures. That's the early indications of that strong polar vortex starting to elongate and starting to stretch out and entering portions of the US as we get into that Monday afternoon time frame. And here's the setup on Monday afternoon. So we're going to be watching a deepening trough again up here off the west coast. Underneath these kind of blue blobs here, that's some colder air. And the lighter, this area right here, that's got a cold core associated with it. So it's going to bring some instability down to, for portions of off the west coast here, as we still got that warm sector, what widespread 80s for much of Texas, and all these warm temperatures like I showed you for much of the central and eastern 2/3 of the US. So here's the setup on Monday. So you have that disturbance is into the deep south on Sunday afternoon. That still continues for portions of Monday afternoon into South Texas, into Louisiana, going into portions of Mississippi and southern portions of Alabama, as we're starting to enter that cold Arctic air as we get into that Monday afternoon time frame. And underneath that cold core, you've got rain off the west coast, and then the snow up in the higher elevations into Washington and Oregon, going into Idaho, going into Montana, Wyoming. And where the tighter the isobars, that's an indication of you're going to be picking up some of those higher wind gusts as well. So you're going to have very windy conditions underneath that trough that's going to be diving southward. Here's the red line. So that's more or less your freezing line, where you're going to be experiencing your freezing temperatures to the north, and then well above average temperatures to the south of that line. But again, that does not last long, because there's that trough going to be continuing to dive further off into this off the west coast here. Now get into the portions of California, Nevada, going into Utah, portions of Wyoming as it plunges into Arizona. You're still in the warm sector for much of the deep south and much of the southeast and much of the east coast as we get into that Tuesday afternoon time frame. And out ahead of that, there's this disturbance for the deep south. We got some heavier rain extending to push through Arkansas by then, through Louisiana, through Mississippi, going into Tennessee, going into Kentucky, portions of Illinois and Indiana. And this is your Tuesday, February the 22nd time frame. Here's the date at the top hand corner of your screen. And then underneath that, there's the Arctic air as it continues to plunge southward. Underneath that cold core of that mid-level low pressure system off the west coast, that's going to bring some snow showers into Nevada, into Utah, going into Colorado by then, in the midsection of the country, into the Dakotas, and going into Nebraska now, into Minnesota, as well as Iowa. And then you got that shallow Arctic air mass. This is a very cold Arctic air mass. Arctic air is your coldest air. It's your densest air. It's the air that travels faster, and then also it's shallow. It's very shallow air. So yeah, it's definitely a concern with these shallow cold air masses, where you're still going to have that warm air aloft, that you have some of that transferring it over to freezing rain into portions of Iowa, getting into portions of Wisconsin, as well as Michigan, as we get into that Tuesday afternoon time frame. But there's the Arctic surge really starting to filter in the midsection of the country on that Tuesday time frame, with again well above average temperatures for much of the deep south of Texas into Louisiana, much of the southeast, much of the Ohio Valley, and much of the East Coast, right? So underneath that cold core, you've got some cold air, but the Arctic surge enters the middle of the country with these well below average anomalies of 30 below, if not more, because this is some true Arctic air coming all the way from Siberia, and it means business. And some of these places could be the coldest temperatures they've seen so far this season as we get deeper into next week, as that cold Arctic air will continue to plunge, entering the portions of Oklahoma by then, entering the Texas panhandle, as you're going to be making a transition and falling temperatures for much of the day as you go into portions of North Texas, getting into Central Texas as we get into that Tuesday afternoon time frame. But then by Wednesday, things start to get a little bit more interesting for portions of the South as that Arctic surge continues to dive southward. There's your freezing line as we get into that noon time frame on Wednesday afternoon, right across the North Texas area, with heavier snow starting to break out in Arizona, getting back into Colorado by then. The tight isobars, that's an indication where those heavier wind gusts are going to be. And there's the snow line to the north. We got that rain to the south, but ice is going to be starting to break out in portions of North Texas, getting into West Texas, and a good chunk of Oklahoma where it's going to be cold enough. So any precipitation that does fall with that warm air aloft is going to be in the form of freezing rain, and with temperatures right at the freezing mark by then and falling, all that's potentially going to be freezing on the roadway. So things are going to be drastically changing in a big way as we get into that Wednesday time frame. And as we get into that Wednesday time frame, there's the temperatures, right? I mean, here's the actual surface temperatures for Wednesday afternoon around noon. Again, this is getting into that, 5 or 6 days out now. So this is Arctic air, and I actually expect these temperatures to be a little bit colder than what this model even portrays even at the moment, because it's true Arctic air. I mean, this is going to be coming from Siberia, and it's cold in Siberia, and that is going to be plunging southward as we get into the middle of next week. So these temperatures are going to be mean business, with below zero temperatures for a good chunk of the Dakotas and to South Dakota, with single digits now rearing its head into that noon time frame on Wednesday, into Nebraska, into Kansas, into Colorado. Widespread 20s starting to enter the picture, into portions of New Mexico, getting to those 20s in the Texas Panhandle, almost entering freezing temperatures, if not the upper 20s in portions of North Texas, going into Oklahoma. So yeah, there's Missouri with that freezing line. So anything in the red or the lighter blue are going to be in your freezing sector as temperatures continue to fall in the afternoon, with precipitation as well. So as you wake up on Thursday morning, again, those impulses of Arctic air continues to pulse and pull further and further south as we go throughout the week. All these green areas as you wake up on 6 a.m. Thursday, February the 24th time frame. Look at that. Widespread teens below zero for a good chunk of the middle of the country, with single digits starting to entering into Kansas, starting to entering portions of low teens in the Oklahoma area, into the Texas Panhandle, into Arizona. Widespread 20s, and that cold Arctic air continues all the way into central Texas, maybe trying to reach San Antonio by then. As much of Houston is still in the warm sector. Look at the low temperatures. That's low, guys. That's not highs. That's low temperatures, 70 degrees in Houston, in Louisiana, and Mississippi, and Alabama, much of the southeast, as you're obviously not under that Arctic air as of yet. And then look at the precipitation as we have possibly another disturbance coming back behind. So you have that initial disturbance on Wednesday over portions of North Texas and Central Texas, and then we have another disturbance is going to be pulling through with more ice, and then you got snow breaking out northwest of Dallas into the Panhandle. All snow going into Oklahoma City, into Tulsa, going into Kansas by then, northern Missouri, northern Illinois, northern Indiana. And then you got ice underneath that, and there's the lighter rain where you're not underneath that Arctic air as of yet. But that disturbance pushes off, right? And so you've got more or less a back-to-back event starting sometime on Wednesday with freezing rain for Texas, going into Oklahoma. That all the precipitation ends by Thursday night. But there's the freezing line as we get into that 5-6 o'clock time frame, even on Thursday now, with that freezing line draped across North Texas. So draped across Oklahoma, with still below freezing temperatures even by then. So even when the precipitation ends, you're still going to be below freezing. So whatever's on the ground is not going to be able to melt, even in this sector, as we get into that Thursday afternoon time frame. And the heavier snows will be extending into going through Iowa by then, transferring over to Illinois, going into portions of Indiana. And then you got that ice threat into Indiana and Ohio by then, as there's the warm sector with those, well above average temperatures for a good chunk of the southeast, waiting for that Arctic air. But there's Friday. Again, continues to push further and further south all these green areas are, again, 10 to 15 degrees below average temperatures. Underneath these pink areas, that's your 20, 25, uppers to almost 30 degrees below zero by Friday morning. So you're talking several days potentially below freezing by then, as finally that Arctic air continues all the way down to the deep south of Texas by that Friday time frame. So again, that's going to be another week away by the time it actually makes it all the way down in the deep south of Texas, going into Louisiana, going into Mississippi by then. And then there's the warm sector well to the East Coast. So you're not really going to be experiencing any of that Arctic air as of yet for the next 7 days. But there's the setup as we get into that Friday afternoon time frame. As yet we have another disturbance that's going to be pushing off the Pacific Northwest, with more rain entering back in the picture for the West Coast, and then the lighter to the heavier snows will start to enter the picture of eastern Washington, eastern Oregon by then, hitting back into Idaho. But there's the freeze line, so it might take a while to warm up and get out of there. Even though when the precipitation ends, you still got that Arctic surge continuing to plunge southward, so you still could be dealing with that freeze line for a good chunk of North Texas to the north. So all these areas to the north of there, you're still going to be into Friday afternoon with those freezing temperatures. And by Saturday, you got nighttime again, it continues to plunge. So you got that 20 to 30 degrees below average temperatures. And now the Arctic air overtakes much of the East Coast with those 10 to 15 degrees below average temperature anomalies. And again, that's probably like 8 days from now. We'll be fine-tuning this as we get throughout the week, but you can definitely see there's true Arctic air on the table coming up in the week ahead. And so as you wake up on Saturday morning time frame, we're still 20 degrees potentially in Dallas. I mean, you got 31 in portions of Austin, getting into San Antonio. You got widespread 20s in Mississippi and Alabama, much of the southeast, with below zero temperatures in Missouri and to Iowa. That would be definitely your coldest temperatures of the season so far, with well below average temperatures for a good chunk of the country, and widespread freezing line as well, with all that snow and ice continuing to remain on the ground. So you got a lot of high impacts coming up this week, with probably a lot of travel delays and a lot of just concerns as we get into that Tuesday afternoon, but especially as we get into that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday time frame, because as that Arctic air continues to plunge, a lot of these areas with the precipitation ending is just not going to be able to melt, with widespread freezing temperatures extending for possibly several days in some areas. So hey, I appreciate you guys watching. Be sure to like this video. I'll be very active this week on all the comments on YouTube here, as well as social media. Posting a lot on Facebook, as well as Twitter, to get more on-time updates as this continues to look a little bit more favorable. And as we get into next week, for sure, I will be very active in doing daily updates, if not almost twice a day, on this channel, to keep you well ahead of the storm, as I'm expecting a very active week ahead. So I appreciate you guys watching. Be sure to like this video and definitely subscribe to my channel, and catch me in the next update where I protect you before and after the storm.